Good morning, everyone. Namaskar, ni hao. A warm welcome to the webinar on Nepal, China, India Trilateralism organized by Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs, AIDIA. I am Shristi Kafle, a journalist based in Kathmandu. I'd like to extend my warm gratitude to all of our distinguished speakers from three different countries, Nepal, India, and China, for your valuable presence. And I'd also like to welcome our live audiences. Uh, as we all know, the world is facing a tough time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and all the physical events have been turned into the virtual ones. AIDIA has been organizing various webinars, particularly focusing on foreign affairs. And today we are going to discuss about trilateralism. As we all know, Nepal is located between the two giant economies, India and China. Thus, strategically, Nepal's role is very important. So, today we are going to discuss the various avenues of trilateralism and the possible benefits which can create a win-win situation for all these three countries. Before starting on, I would like to introduce our guest speakers. From China, we have Professor Zhang Shubin. He is a director of Nepal Study Center at Heibei University of Economics and Business. He is also a professor of English language in the Department of Foreign Language Teaching at the same university. Similarly, we have Mr. Sheng. He is a research fellow of the Chengdu Institute of World Affairs in Sichuan province. He uh, he was a research fellow at the International Peace Institute in Nepal and an honorary expert advisor for the Jivraj Ashrit Foundation. From India, we have Mr. Anwar. He is a fellow at the Harvard Asia Center. He is also an associate in research at Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies at Harvard University. He is a visiting fellow at the University of Tokyo's Institute for Advanced Studies on Asia and Young Leader Fellow at the Pacific Forum. Similarly, we have Ms. Angana Guha. She is a research associate at Delhi Policy Group. She completed her MPhil in Foreign Policy from the Institute of Foreign Policy Studies, University of Calcutta. She is a PhD candidate at the Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi. From Nepal, we have two speakers. There is a little change in the composition of the speakers as Mr. Bhaskar Koirala couldn't make it at the end. So we have Mr. Hari Prasad Chand, also Agnipunja. He is the advisor to the Vice-Chancellor at Midwestern University, Nepal, and chairman of the Nepal Institute of Foreign Affairs and Prosperity. He is a PhD candidate at the Department of International Relations and Diplomacy from Tribhuvan University. Similarly, we have Mr. Biswas Baral. He is the editor of the Annapurna Express. He has over 15 years of experience in Nepali journalism with stints in the Himalayan Times, the Kathmandu Post, and Republica Delhi. So we'd like to welcome our distinguished guests once again. Uh, Nepal, India, and China, they share a cordial relationship for ages, but friction in the relationship between China and India have risen frequently, primarily due to, but not limited to, border dispute, trade imbalance, China's support to Pakistan, among others. In the context of Nepal, it has harmonious relations with both the neighbors. However, we know that Nepal had a close relation with India in the past, but it has witnessed the chilly relations in the recent years, particularly due to the political interference, economic blockade of 2015, border disputes which erupted recently, and various other issues. Meanwhile, China has been increasing its engagement in Nepal, particularly through investments and financial aid and big mega projects. So we believe there is enormous potential for cooperation between these three nations. So we will hear more from our speakers. So to start on, I would like to request Mr. Zhang Shubin, Director of Nepal Study Center at Heibei University of Economics and Business. Mr. Chang Subin, the floor is yours. Mr. Chang Subin. I guess he's there, but the audio is in connection. Maybe we can make some changes. Mr. Chang Subin, can you hear me? Mr. Chang Subin? I think we can go with the other participant for now.
So it looks like Mr. Zhang Zabin is written in chat box that he cannot hear. No sound, I cannot hear.
Sajina, please support him. All right, maybe to start on, I would like to request Mr. Anwar, fellow at the Harvard AIDIA Center, Harvard University, for his presentation.
All right, thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you at organization AIDIA for inviting me. But first of all, I would make a little bit correction. I think there is some kind of information problem that I am not from India. I'm joining from now Washington, DC, but I'm originally from Bangladesh. So that should be make it clear at the beginning. So I think that you have a speaker from all three countries, India, China, and Nepal. And I think it will make more sense if they speak about from their own country perspective, how these things has been seen from their own country perspective. But I will rather try to see Nepal from other South Asian, smaller, particularly South Asian country perspective, and see that talking about the South Asian broader regional geopolitical calculation where Nepal fit and how this has been seen also other part of the South Asian country from through that broader lens. And then the other speaker can make case country by country. That would be, I think, make much more sense. So South Asia, basically a sub-region which has been known for decades as a basically underdevelopment, ethnical and regional insurgency and this kind of thing. So when a few decades ago we looked at South Asia as a region, we didn't thought that South Asia would be a part of a greater geopolitical landscape or greater geopolitical calculation. And also all the South Asian regional and extra-regional countries such as India, China, or even to some extent United States has been not really looking at South Asia from that perspective. If we start by saying that the China before couple decades ago, we have seen that China has been exercising so-called hide and buy doctrine that laid out by the late or their paramount leader Deng Xiaoping, who is basically said China will not involve in the outside world in that kind of active role it will not play. But since basically we have seen this kind of reversal or kind of China is sought to play broader role in the global area through the particularly in the South Asia after the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, which has been launched. And we have seen that the President Xi Jinping went to Pakistan and make a statement in Pakistan Parliament the importance of South Asia, looking at that South Asia is a region that connect basically maritime Silk Road and the road. These two things connect together in South Asia as a reason. But the US perspective, US also was kind of involved with Afghanistan war and seeing broader South Asia basically through the lens of Afghanistan as from a security and insurgency perspective. India, due to its resource limited and limitation and other kind of domestic issue, and to some extent, India also have taken a smaller country as kind of as a granted to be always kind of cultural and other linkage and not really actively participant in the South Asian broader geopolitical affairs. But we have seen that this landscape I'm talking about is couple decades ago. But as the beginning of 20th century, we have seen that this has been changed broadly for various reasons. The first of all, I think the South Asia as a region is growing. And the South Asia is not people consider as a region that is known for insurgency and the domestic violence and political instability. Rather than we have seen last 2 decades, South Asia broader all country, particularly smaller country like Bangladesh, India, and others, and Nepal to some extent also has like sustained their economic growth for more than 6%. And then we have seen that, as I mentioned earlier, China is also sought to play a greater role through Belt and Road Initiative. It has a kind of interesting relation with Pakistan is a one hand, but other smaller countries see China in a one way. But India, to some extent, didn't participate the Belt and Road Initiative formally, but it has other broader kind of engagement with Pakistan. From US side, we also see that under the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy, United States also see South Asia and broader Indo-Pacific region as a part of their broader Indo-Pacific strategy, which aims to provide a kind of alternative in terms of infrastructure or private investment, and to some extent alternative to the China's Belt and Road Initiative. So South Asia as a region coming back forum that basically known as underdevelopment or insurgency basically is a part of a great game. Now, how those countries, particularly that I categorize beside India is a nuclear power, big country. Pakistan is also is a nuclear power, but the other 5 smaller countries that I personally categorize as a non-nuclear 5 country. So when we look at this regional dynamic, it's really very. So Pakistan, it has historical ties with China. It has always been a good relation with China. But India is an ups and down, and India see a different way. But other 5 South Asian non-nuclear 5 countries see things in quite different way. So these 5 countries is the primary stage of their development, and they also in a nation building stage. So for these non-nuclear 5 countries, their primary consideration is economic development, infrastructure development, and other sort of in the improving the livelihood of the common people. So these 5 countries, including Nepal, or we can talk about Sri Lanka, we can talk about Maldives, Bhutan, all other countries, they are not aiming for to be a regional hegemon or the global power. Their goal is to improve the livelihood of their common people, building their infrastructure, building their industry, and the other sector. So basically, these countries have been suffering for decades for the investment because they always suffer from their national budget deficit. So I think that for the decade, if we look at how this country interacted with other development partners, whether it's come to Japan or Western country or Asian Development Bank and other kind of thing, I think they have sorry, they have participated. I think in the sorry, excuse me. Okay. So they have participated in a different format and different way. But for the South Asia, these smaller 5 countries, I think they welcome the diversification of their options. They have historical linkage with India in terms of history and culture. But India itself has kind of limitation whether it comes to infrastructure development and other kind of investment things. So on the other hand, United States is playing some sort of role in the broader Indo-Pacific strategy umbrella, but it still didn't come up with a substantial investment in terms of the other sector that can really contribute to the South Asian overall development. And therefore, that is the basic entry point from China to go to this country, and this country welcome engagement with China that they can contribute in their, whether it's come to infrastructure, in overall development and FDI. And if we go to country by country, whether it's Nepal and other country, we can see that this non-nuclear 5 country is welcoming to the engagement with China. And now that basically make a kind of discomfort from Indian perspective, because India always for decade has been the natural leader for South Asia, because 2/3 of land of South Asia goes to India, in terms of population and economic output. But as China become a kind of a new player there, it makes India discomfort. But from South Asian broader regional perspective, I think South Asian can be seen this thing from the perspective of the other regional organization. The one I always mention, that the ASEAN country, Association of Southeast Asian country, we see that within ASEAN country, the regional trade is more than 25%, whereas the regional trade within South Asian country only 5%. Association like SAARC and other kind of regional organization never play a critical role for the regional development, is primarily because India and Pakistan rivalry. So South Asia composed of 8 countries, but the 2 big countries, their internal dynamic has been suffering other smaller South Asian country. And Nepal in particular, we know what happened 2015 and how Nepal's foreign policy has been shifted from a new direction from there. But that kind of example, I think, can be drawn in any other smaller South Asian country. So I think looking forward, I think the further that if South Asian country, including Nepal and other smaller country, really want to prioritize what is their national goal should be. Those countries, for naturally, they don't want to be a great power, or they don't want to play a role beyond their region. Their primary concern is to the development of their livelihood and their country, the nation building. From that perspective, I think the South Asian country should come together and work together in the broader perspective, and so that can basically ensure the development of this region. From Nepal perspective, that's the last sentence I would say before I conclude. That is the Nepal, apparently, as you alluded to in your introduction, that located in the between elephant and dragon, and it looks very small. But these are not only the exception in the Nepal, is not the exception on the all over the world. You can look at the Europe. You look at the Belgium, for example. It is the middle of United Kingdom, France, and Germany. But Belgium, how it turned its weakness, smaller country, into a strength. Now Brussels is the regional hub for a European Union headquarters in Brussels, and all European kind of gateway is in Brussels now. Even in the Asia, we can look at Singapore in between the big country, Indonesia and Malaysia, but Singapore is the most developed country there. So a smaller country like Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Maldives, they don't really necessarily get into that kind of big power competition or great power geopolitical competition. Rather than this country should prioritize what this country need, and this is not really binary option that, well, I can trade with China, that doesn't mean that I cannot engage with India. This country should set their priority, what is their national goal, then engage with other country, whether it's regional or extended regional country, that, well, if you want to engage with us, these are our priority. If you are there to fulfill those things, we are good to go with you or whoever it is. So I will conclude there, and I welcome the question in the following section.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Anwar, for your insightful remarks. Definitely, Nepal can play a role as a viable bridge between these two geopolitical rivals, and definitely the smaller countries in the region can work together for the win-win situation. Now, I would like to move on to the next speaker from China. I hope Mr. Zhang Shubin can hear us well. I'd like to request Mr. Zhang Shubin, Director of Nepal Study Center at Heibei University of Economic and Business, for his presentation. Mr. Zhang Shubin, your audio is muted.
Yes or no?
Yeah, it's on. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Ms. Shristi Kafle, okay, for your warm invitation for me to join this program. Now, the Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Affairs as a very influential think tank in Nepal at this very important period of time, you organize such a Nepal-India-China Trilateralism webinar, web seminar. It is very important and meaningful because, in nowadays, China and India and the United States, now the three countries, actually, it is not on a very good terms now, okay? Especially not long ago, that is, the United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the Secretary of the Defense, Mr. Esper, they visited South Asian countries, including India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Indonesia, as well as Vietnam. Okay. Now, during their visit to these countries, especially when Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Esper, when they visited New Delhi, they signed the agreement that is the basic exchange and the cooperation agreement for geospatial cooperation. Let's put it for short, that is BCA. During the 2+2 India-US ministerial dialogue on October the 27th, the most, Indian friends and most Indian media, all of them are saying that, oh, the United States is helping India to counter China. Okay, that is what they are speaking in the media. Okay, but if you read the Chinese media, you can find very few reports about Chinese media's counterback towards the agreement signed by between India and United States. Now, what's more, Mr. Pompeo, he also attacked China when he visited all these countries, right? Yeah. So that is very, it seems that the Chinese are always attacked by the American government, American politicians. And again, in Nepal, nowadays Nepal and India also are not on good conditions, right? Yeah, even the spy agency chief, Mr. Govell, right? Simon Govell visited Nepal several days ago, and the Prime Minister only met him in person. Okay, only from what I have read from the media, from the Nepali side, only the Prime Minister himself was meeting the Indian spy chief, right? Yeah, the RAW, raw chief. So it seems that the the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, the Americans, in Indo-Pacific strategy, it seems that they are confronting each other, at least in South Asian countries, right? So to me, I think what the South Asian countries, especially India and Nepal, what they need most is to try their best to develop their economy and get rid of poverty. Now, at the very immediate moment now, the COVID pandemic is getting very, very worse now. Every day, so many people are getting infected. So China is always ready to help all the countries in the world, even including the United States and India. Now, the Chinese government and the Chinese companies and the Chinese, billionaires, millionaires, they have already donated a lot of aids and products, such as the masks and breathing machines and so on. Okay, and to these countries, including Nepal and India. Okay. So, generally speaking, the military agreement signed between India and China, they are really making India. What's wrong? Can you hear me? Yeah, yeah. It is to me. It is like India has tied itself with the war chart of American-led Indo-Pacific strategy. Another problem is that the MCC in Nepal and in Sri Lanka and so many other countries. Okay? Now, if India and Nepal and they are willing to cooperate with China, I think China is always ready and very willing to help with their infrastructure construction and the current crisis, that is the COVID pandemic. I think we can do a lot of things to help each other. But the conflict at the Galavan Valley and so many American politicians and Indian politicians and Indian high-level officials, they always attack China on any occasions and events. So it is very harmful for the friendly cooperation between China and these countries. And it is the Cold War mentality and the zero-sum game mindset that prevent India from cooperating with China, from the United States to cooperate with China. That is my opinion about the agreement signed between India and China and America. Okay, just when the India and American ministerial dialogue held in New Delhi, the Chinese Communist Party in China, they held a very important plenary session of the 19th Central Committee. They have, launched the 15th five-year plan and the long-term plan for the year 2035. Now, by the end of the year 2020, China will finish building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. That is to say, China will achieve the first sanitary goal. That is when the Communist Party of China was established 100 years ago. That is, the next year will be the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China. China will finish building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. And from next year, China will embark on the new journey to fully build a socialist modern country. That is in the year 2049, when the People's Republic of China was founded for the 100th year, that is the second sanitary goal. China will build itself into a prosperous, strong, culturally advanced, and democratic and beautiful country in the world, and reach a moderately developed country, something like nowadays, South Korea and Spain, something like that. So what China doing now is try to develop the economy to achieve prosperity, to help all the poor to get rid of the poverty. Now, I also think that in South Asia, especially in India and in Nepal, there are a lot of people, they are really very, very poor. Okay. Now, what India and Nepal need most is to develop their economies through the cooperation with China's Belt and Road Initiative. China has never wanted to win and to launch a war with India. So if India buys a lot of advanced machines, fighter planes, and so on, I don't think it is useful. No use. Yeah. So to achieve the win-win cooperation between China and the South Asian countries, first, we should get rid of the Cold War mentality and the zero-sum game mindset in their mind or in our minds. Okay, that is my opinion about the current India, US, and the Nepal situations. And the day before yesterday, the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, the 4 countries' navies, they are now launching the Navy Malabar exercises, right? Yeah. So the Indian media openly say the Navy drill, the Navy exercise is aimed to counter China's influence in the South Asia and the Pacific Ocean. To me, it seems very ridiculous. No use for them to do such things like that to counter China. Chinese always would like to peacefully develop its economy. Yeah. So that
Mr.
is
Zhang,
my.
can you please limit your presentation? We'll get back to you again later, maybe.
Okay, time is up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll get back to you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Definitely, the countries should leave behind the confrontation and the Cold War mentality and should work together for other issues like poverty, unemployment, and the common issues. Now, I would like to request Mr. Hari Prasad Chand. He is advisor to the Vice-Chancellor, Mid-Western University. He is also a PhD candidate. I would like to request Mr. Hari Prasad Chand for your presentation.
Thank you, Shristi ji, for providing me this opportunity. And thanks to, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to AIDIA for this opportunity provided to me this morning. Today I am going to focus on Nepal-India-China trilateralism in epistemic community in the context of changing geopolitics. Actually, Nepal-India-China trilateralism is a little bit vague topic. However, I'm trying to be more focused on the trilateralism in epistemic community in the context of changing geopolitics of Nepal and changing geopolitics of South Asia. Moving towards the background of my presentation today, trilateralism is the emerging discourse which has greater significance in trilateral relations among Nepal, India, and China in the context of regional and global changing dynamics. India and China are moving strategically and economically towards building themselves globally powerful and influential actors on various fronts. They have built a strategic partnership based on their own convenience, choosing the super and great powers. Similarly, India and the USA signed a key defense deal late last month of October 2020 for exchanging the data and information under the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement, BECA, which is supposed to bring the two countries closer to each other and help them to counter China, which was supposed by many scholars. In the month of August, details of a 25-year strategic partnership between China and Iran came to light, which calls for up to 400 billion US dollar in investment spread over 25 years in telecommunication 5G, infrastructure and free trade zones, and controversially a vast expansion in military cooperation to include intelligence sharing and weapon design. Meanwhile, China and Pakistan are in cooperation under China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, since 2015. Similarly, China and Russia signed an unprecedented $270 billion oil deal in 2013, and more than 3,600 Chinese officials had been trained at Russian military academies and training centers by the end of 2016. At the end of 2019, the Russian and Chinese navies held joint exercise far from the two countries' maritime borders. In November 2019, Russian and Chinese warships took part in exercise mostly with the South African Navy, which was the first trilateral Chinese-Russian South African naval exercise. On the other hand, the USA announced the Indo-Pacific strategy involving the other three countries, Japan, Australia, and India in 2017, which will act for common security and economic matters in the Indian and Pacific Ocean, as many strategists and experts claim. The USA is trying to involve Sri Lanka and Nepal in the Indo-Pacific strategy through Millennium Challenge Corporation, where China is highly engaged recently. Therefore, India, the USA, and China are making and remaking strategic partnership in South Asia, where Nepal locates at the center. In addition, China and India moving ahead regionally and globally on both strategic and economic fronts, and thus the regional geopolitics has been changing. In this changing regional geopolitics, Nepal's geopolitics also change, which affect Nepal's India and China relations. In this backdrop, trilateralism among China, Nepal, and India in the front of the epistemic community will be vital for effective trilateral cooperation to mitigate the differences, to increase the similarities, and to gear up the cooperation among three countries. Now I'm moving towards the role of epistemic community in trilateralism. What kind of role can be played by the epistemic community to enhance the trilateralism? That is the part of this subtopic. And if we observe the situation of trilateralism among China, India, and Nepal, two factors seem to become vital. The first is determinism, and the second one is free will. The study of policy coordination among three states involves arguments about these two terms and also about the ways in which the trilateral system is maintained and transformed. Though determinism and free will relate to the epistemic community in the international system, the first is much related to the state leadership, and the second is much concerned with an epistemic community, particularly in trilateral discourse in Nepal, China, and India. An epistemic community is a network of knowledge-based experts who help decision makers to define the problems they face, identify various policy solutions, and assess the policy outcome, who always work in the environment of free will without any restriction from the state leadership. On the other hand, the leaders always have exercised their power and authority based on the determinism in the local context to influence their epistemic community towards their political destination. They often try to instruct, direct, and control the epistemic community to achieve their political interests rather than mobilizing them in fair knowledge production. Only the fair knowledge produced by the epistemic community can minimize the differences and maximize the harmony among three countries that ultimately speed up the trilateral discourse. Therefore, the role of epistemic community in Nepal, China, and India trilateral discourse should be focused on building a trilateral network of policy experts, researchers, think tanks, scholars, academics, etc. to contribute in research, publication, and development. Uh, Now, I would like to start how trilateralism in epistemic community can be materialized. There are, uh, if we studied the epistemic community or think tank in China and Nepal and India, there are so many epistemic community. There are so many areas of trilateral cooperation for three countries. However, the proposed China-Nepal-India economic corridor is one of the most important issues to materialize. And author Peter M. Haas claims that the role of the network of knowledge-based experts, that is epistemic community, play in articulating the cause and effect relationship of complex problems, helping states identify their interests, framing the issue for collective debate, proposing specific policies, and identifying salient points for negotiation. Simply, the negotiation is demanded when bilateral, trilateral, or multilateral issues emerge. In the case of China, Nepal, India economic corridor, there are so many issues and concerns from all three countries. India seems reluctant to materialize the corridor basically because of her reservation on BRI. Formerly, India did not take part in the first and second Belt and Road Initiative forums organized in China. From a higher level, Nepal signed BRI on 12 May 2017. China and Nepal are agreed to construct the Kerung-Kathmandu railway line. However, India watching the scenario developed cautiously. It means there are so many issues among the three countries, and dialogue and negotiation are most important among those three. Before conducting dialogue, rigorous joint research and publication are widely demanded for the purpose of policy feedback to policymakers, implementers, and state leadership. The role of the epistemic community at this juncture become vital. And for effective trilateral research and publication, trilateralism should be developed and grown up in the epistemic community of China, Nepal, and India. If we kept in mind our diplomatic practices among three countries, trilateralism in the epistemic community can be built basically on two different ways. The first one is trilateralism among the states, think tanks, or epistemic community. And the second one is trilateralism among independent think tanks or epistemic community. Uh, Indian Council of World Affairs has mentioned 19 think tanks on its website. Similarly, based on my observation, almost 25 top-level think tanks in China are highly engaged in research, publication, and development. Uh, if we talk about Nepal, the current government has established the Policy Research Institute (PRI) and Institute of Foreign Affairs (IFA) is already there in Nepal. Trilateralism among those think tanks of three countries under the framework of the track one approach can be materialized, which will build a common understanding of the China, Nepal, India economic corridor. Such kind of trilateralism is quite important for the overall trilateralism. Similarly, there can be two ways for trilateralism under the track two approach. The first is trilateralism among independent think tanks of China, Nepal, and India. And the second one is trilateralism among top universities from all three countries. Under the second way, Nepal and China have done the cooperation in academic cooperation for a student exchange program or think tank exchange program or professor exchange program in the past. In conclusion of my presentation, we can build the trilateralism in the epistemic community of Nepal, India, and China. in both track 1 and track 2 approaches and speed up the motion for mutual gains of all the three countries. The trilateralism in this front demands the high engagement of researchers, scholars, academics, think tanks, intellectuals, and even university students in a systematic way. The existing practice is not systematic and properly coordinated and monitored at the level of the government of all three countries. And any kind of disagreement, disputes, and differences can be settled down in a peaceful manner, and the role of the epistemic community becomes always a vital one for this purpose. Uh, at the end, I would like to extend my sincere thanks once again to organizer, Asian Institute of Diplomacy and International Office, AIDIA, for this opportunity provided to me. And I wish the AIDIA all the best in this front of epistemic community of Nepal in the days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hari Prasad Chand. He is the advisor to the Vice-Chancellor at Midwestern University. Thank you so much for your insightful remarks. And I would like to request all our speakers to please limit their presentations to 10 minutes. We will also have question and answer session at the end. Now I would like to request Mr. Sheng, Research Fellow of Chengdu Institute of World Affairs, for his remarks.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, first I would like to sincerely thank you. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry for the internet problem. First, I would like to sincerely thank you for inviting me. And today I'm going to talk about, from Chinese perspective, what is China's vision and why is that China's BRI project, in my opinion, is quite special and serving for, and should have some sort of attractions for the Nepalese people, and as well as all other countries in the South Asia. Because people often ask me, like when I was in Nepal, people often ask me, like, what is the difference between BRI and the Indo-Pacific strategy? Or I'm also aware that like people were talking about and fiercely debating over the issue of MCC, like not long ago. Why is BRI so special from those things? And why is that, in my opinion, BRI should be more attractive to Nepal rather than like IPS or like any other like American projects? It's not because of money. I mean, money is one of the issue that right now China has this expertise in infrastructure technologies, and China can allocate more funds to fund the construction of infrastructure, which the United States may not do or may not want to do. Like it either cannot do so or it doesn't want to do so. So that's one thing, but I don't think that's the most decisive thing. I think the most decisive thing is a difference of the worldview of China, especially Chinese understanding of the concept of sovereignty, which is very essential for the relatively smaller countries in South Asia. So we know that Nepal, as we talk about, is one relatively smaller country located between two larger countries, China and India. But we also are aware that Nepal itself has a very prolonged and glorious history in the ancient times. And the ancient kingdom of Nepal was actually quite a strong power in the ancient times. So this has, and also like this is one aspect, is that Nepal's historical glory. And second aspect is that in like since the British colonialism enters South Asia, we see that Nepal, just like any other countries in the region, have suffered a lot under Western imperialism. So understandably, all the countries, all of those post-colonial countries, they have a very sensitive approach toward foreign influence. And also we know that after Nepal is after South Asia is getting away from British imperialism, there's this controversial relationship between Nepal and India in the 1950s and 60s. And all of those historical memories has contributed to Nepal's sensitive idea and understandably sensitive attitude toward foreign influence. So what I think is that Nepal wants foreign aid and foreign assistance to develop itself, but the priority is that to maintain the national independence and absolute sovereignty of its own while receiving those foreign aids. So that's why I think the Chinese plan is quite attractive and quite distinctively attractive, especially comparing to the Western ones, because China is actually probably the only country among the large global powers, the only global power in the contemporary world that has an almost absolutist understanding of the concept of sovereignty. So we see that in the West, especially United States. United States doesn't really care about sovereignty that much. United States has its own standards to judge the people. I mean, United States say you are democracy. Okay, you are democracy. United States say you're not. Okay, they bomb you. That's what do we know? Like that's what United States have been doing. And the European countries are quite interventionist as well. As we see, there are numerous cases that the European countries are also like trying to project their own European understanding of the concepts such as democracy or human rights or anything to the developing countries, and all the foreign aid that the developing countries take from those Western countries are attached with political conditions. You either have to do a Western type of political system, or you have to make some concessions to the the companies with Western backgrounds, or anything like that. But the Chinese ones don't have any significant political condition except one thing, is to uphold the One China policy. So One China policy in our case of Nepal is basically like two things. One is not to have any relationship with the regime right now located in Chinese Taiwan. Okay, fine, Nepal doesn't have it. And another thing is to at least do not have any like official relationship or like any official relationship with the former reactionary ruler of Tibet. Okay, Nepal has been doing that since 1950s. That Nepal has been supporting One China policy since 1950s. So there's no additional things attached at all, except like the basic respect for the One China policy. And hello. Yeah, it seems like my internet is interesting, very terrible today. But
it's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me finish and I'll try to make it short. So yeah, and I would like to quote, there are many countries in the developing countries who have expressed this idea that they prefer to take Chinese foreign aid or to have like international development program with China rather than with the West, because of this reason that I just aforementioned. For example, the Ali Yusuf, the former Sudanese ambassador to China, he once said that collaborative aid programs could lead to political conditionality imposed by the US if Sudan is taking aid from US, and understand the sovereignty of countries like Sudan. And he mentioned that, and he argued that that's the reason that many African countries prefer to have international development project with China in order to maintain their national sovereignty, because China does not impose any political conditions except the respect for One China policy, which is quite basic if you compare the same scale to what the Western terms are. So I think this is quite important. And I think this is why, in my opinion, the BRI has its distinctive attraction, especially for relatively smaller countries in South Asia, because of their legitimate security concerns and their sensitive approach to the concept of sovereignty, which was caused by historical factors. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sheng. Uh, he was the research fellow at the Chengdu Institute of World Affairs. Definitely all the nations should respect each other's sovereignty and recognize the concerns like security, among others. Now I would like to request Ms. Angana Guha. She is a research associate at Delhi Policy Group. Ms. Roy, the floor is yours. Your audio is muted.
Hi, Shristi. I would like to share my PPT. Is that possible? Yeah.
Yes, I guess that's fine.
No, actually, you have to allow me to share my screen, you know.
Sajina, can you please help on that? Sajina?
Okay, I will start meanwhile, because there are certain only certain slides I wanted to show only about the economic data, because my presentation focuses on the economy. I will start meanwhile. When I'm allowed, I will just show the slides. Okay. Now it's there.
It works.
Yeah, is it
Yeah, it's visible.
just a second. Okay. It's happening. Okay. Um, hmm.
You can click on the play. See in the left corner, there is a button for play on the top of the left.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think it's moving. Can you see?
Yes, it's working.
Before just beginning my presentation focuses essentially on the economic aspects of India-Nepal relations. And the theme is India-Nepal-China trilateral. I would just like to add here that any trilateral cooperation project has to be based on conducive bilateral relations. And for that, I think, to start with track 3 dialogue to initiate any kind of trilateral cooperation is required. And moving on from there, I feel that like as discussed, that I want to focus on my topic today is more on India-Nepal relationship and the economic aspects to it. And as to begin, Nepal is a landlocked country bordered by India, and it shares 1,850 kilometers of borders. Open borders and deep-rooted people-to-people contact of kinship and culture has helped them build a unique bond of cooperation and friendship, India and Nepal. As per the Ministry of External Affairs report, approximately 6 lakh Indians are living in Nepal, and 7 to 8 million nationals are working in India. The India-Nepal Treaty of Friendship of 1950 is the bedrock of their relationship. And the Nepali citizens have enjoyed unparalleled advantages in India, availing facilities and opportunities at par with the Indian citizens. Indian law permits Nepali citizens to own properties in India. Talking about the India-Nepal relations, before talking about the economic relation, which is always very fundamental in any kind of bilateral relationship, I would like to say that India-Nepal relations is multidimensional. Some of the important aspects I would want to touch upon is defense cooperation. India has been assisting Nepal Army in its modernization and supplying equipments and providing training. The Indo-Nepal battalion level joint military exercise exercise Surya Kiran is conducted alternatively in India and Nepal. Since 1950, India and Nepal have been awarding each other's army chief with the honorary rank of general in the recognition of mutual harmonious relations between the two armies. Then connectivity and development partnership. Government of India's development assistance to Nepal is a broad-based program focusing on creation of infrastructure at the grassroots level, under which various projects have been implemented in the areas of infrastructure, health, education, water resources, and rural and community development. Disaster management. When the devastating earthquake that struck Nepal in 2015, India dispatched National Disaster Response Force team and special aircrafts with rescue and relief materials. The total relief assistance to Nepal amounted to over 67 million US dollars. Also, India announced a post-earthquake reconstruction package of US dollar 1 billion. India's economic relationship is quite robust. In the current scenario, economic relationship is the most significant of their bilateral relations. India is Nepal's largest export market and the top investor of foreign capital stock. India provides transit facility through its territory to access seaports for trading. Nepal-India bilateral trade relations is governed by bilateral trade treaty of signed in 1971 and revised in 1991, 93, 96, 2002, and 2009. As per the treaty, India and Nepal offer tariff and duty concession on primary and manufactured products imported from each other's country. Talking about the scope of strengthening India-Nepal relations, shared democratic values, historical, culture, and social ties have contributed towards building a robust India-Nepal ties. People-to-people contact is a strong factor. Former Foreign Secretary Shyam Saran says India's Himalayan regions have vast Nepali populations. 80% of Sikkim's population is Nepalis. They live in large numbers in Assam, Uttarakhand, and other places. A big chunk of politicians in Nepal have grown up in Indian universities. Sectors like hydropower, industrial manufacturing, service, tourism, construction, agriculture, minerals, and energy have already attracted investment. The landscape and climatic condition makes invest in organic farming and herbal farming conducive. Again, the young and affordable workforce, Nepal's expertise in eye surgery and bypass surgery, its ability to harness hydropower makes it an important country for India's investment. There are more than 150 Indian ventures operating in Nepal in areas of manufacturing, telecom, power, and tourism. In August recently, India and Nepal had a joint working group meeting during which the two sides discussed future areas of cooperation in the in the petroleum and energy sector, including possibilities of new pipelines for supply of petroleum products to Nepal. In the present trajectory, energy cooperation is emerging as an important area of collaboration for India and Nepal. India and Nepal have a power exchange agreement since 1971 for meeting the power requirements in the border areas of the two countries. An agreement on electric power trade, cross-border transmission, interconnection, and grid connectivity with India and Nepal was signed, in 2014 to facilitate border electricity transmission, grid connectivity, and power trade. India-Nepal synergy can be witnessed again in the area of education and culture, which has facilitated people-to-people contact over the years. Some of the suggestions for, where India-Nepal hold immense collaborative opportunities in the following sectors are processing value chains. The food processing industry in India is one of the largest in the country. The share of India's export of processed food in global trade is approximately 30 billion dollar. Then the tourism development, India's ever-growing hotel industry can steer the development process of hospitality sector in Nepal. Coming to the hydropower generation, Nepal is rich in water resources with the potential to generate 83,000 megawatt of hydropower. Hence, electricity trade is an important sector. then banking and financial, the magnitude of banking and financial services in Nepal is relatively small and limited. India can enter into a joint venture with Nepal to develop and sustain the banking and financial services. And Nepal lacks research centers in the education services, are committed to the creation and dissemination of knowledge in a range of fields and disciplines. So since they lack research centers, they can collaborate on those areas. India can enter in greenfield and brownfield investments. And finally, some in the health services, Nepal's healthcare sector has the potential to export services. India can set up healthcare related infrastructure. There are opportunities for public-private partnership in the development and management of health sector. Some of the issues which requires some attention is the SAFTA ambiguity. The concessions under SAFTA were to cease following the completion of the SAFTA process. As Nepal is yet to complete the tariff liberalization process under SAFTA, it leaves the status under SAFTA ambiguous. The ambiguity needs to be addressed. While the bilateral trade treaty provides duty-free access to each other's primary products as the agreed list, Government of Nepal levies agricultural reform fee at the rate of 5% on import of primary products from India. When Nepal became a member of the WTO in 2004, it had made a commitment to eliminate the duty in 10 years. This fee continues to be levied. And then non-tariff barriers. Indian exporters often complain about facing non-tariff barriers while accessing the Nepal market. For example, in the case of pharmaceuticals, a majority of Indian pharmaceutical exporters feel that the export regulation related to authorization and productivity process is complex. Again, in the case of the export of cement, Nepal has instituted a complete ban on the import of PPC grade cement manufactured by the ACC Limited Cement, which again is has received certificates of BIS standards. Then underutilization of tariff quota. The 2002 revision of the bilateral trade treaty imposed a tariff rate quota on ghee, copper product, acrylic yarn, and zinc oxide. And duty-free access of these goods imported from Nepal into India was allowed up to a specified quota limit. However, it has remained grossly underutilized. Then physical barriers to cross-border. There are 27 trading points between India and Nepal, and there has been very less studies has been done. Only out of those 27, only detailed studies has been done on 2 of the cross-border postings. So there can be more discussion on that. And finally, there is FDI flows from India to Nepal are subjected to various policy-related barriers like lack of harmony between different FDI governing authorities, problems with respect to land acquisition, disrupting activities of labor unions, tax concerns such as no tax rebates on profits that gets reinvested, rampant corruption, infringement of copyright, trademark, and patent of international brands, and insufficient infrastructure. So these issues can be addressed. And finally, again, about India, Nepal, China trilateral, I can just say that any trilateral cooperation should be foundation should be conducive bilateral relations, and we can start talking about those improving the bilateral relations for furthering a trilateral discussion, and that should and the first step should be track 3 dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Angana Guha. Thank you so much for shedding light on the various aspects of Nepal-India bilateral relations and the issues that need to be addressed. Now, moving on next, we have Mr. Biswas Baral, editor of the Annapurna Express.
Thank you, Shristi, and thank you, AIDIA, for this opportunity. I'd like to make a very brief presentation, and I'd like to focus on the theme today, which is trilateralism. And when you talk about trilateralism, one of the focus of this government, the foreign policy focus of the current government is, it says, is making Nepal a vibrant economic bridge between India and China. And this is a very controversial concept in the sense that it is often thought of as infeasible, and especially right now, India and China have such bad relations that this very concept of making Nepal a vibrant economic bridge between the two countries looks increasingly unrealistic. I think one of the interesting ideas that came in during this session is that since the top level leadership are not talking about trilateralism, why don't the academics and scholars from Nepal, India, and China get together and build a platform of sorts so that the concept of trilateralism can be advanced at a higher level. But I think given the level of mistrust there is right now between India and China, that is also increasingly unlikely, because you can the journalists and scholars can meet at lower levels, but for their message to filter through to the top level, it's very difficult. So I don't see that prospect right now. So in the current context, talking about Nepal, India, China, trilateral cooperation is a little far-fetched and unrealistic also, I think. And India in particular has been very suspicious of Nepal's attempts to build this kind of trilateralism, trilateral trade, or trilateral connectivity between India, Nepal, and China, because it still seems to believe that it wants to have almost exclusive foreign policy rights or say in Nepal. It doesn't say that, but at least the implicit assumption seems to be that. So it's been very reluctant to accept the concept of trilateralism. Instead, what was proposed from India a couple of years ago was this concept of India, China plus. So that means the primary actors are India and China, and Nepal would just be added. Would be add-on, and that was roundly rejected in Nepal. Even the government here was forced to say that we will not P plus. So again, that led to nowhere. And another concept, one of the speakers from China earlier mentioned about this BRI. Maybe we can advance the trilateralism through BRI, but that is again not looking feasible at the moment, because India is not a partner, and frankly, it doesn't look like it will be a part of BRI anytime soon. So it is. We can talk about this idea of trilateralism as a conceptual level, and we have been hearing about this concept for 20, 30 years since it was first articulated, but nothing has come out of it. And I think right now the only option seems to be to improve our bilateral relations, Nepal's bilateral relations with India and China separately, and see where we are, say, 5-10 years down the line. Because right now I don't see much possibility of the revival of the trilateral idea. And one last thing I'd like to mention is this concept of trilateralism gained momentum in Nepal for the reason that India has always been the predominant external actor here. So it was felt that we need to balance India's large sway here by involving China. So that was why we took part in the BRI, and that is why this concept of trilateralism has been advanced, whether the current government, old government accepts it or not. So that is why the Indians are a little suspicious. But again, this trilateralism and Nepal, making Nepal a bridge, makes perfect economic sense. If one of the targets of the BRI is the vast markets in North India, which can be easily accessed through Nepal. But what we have seen over the last few years is that when there is a geostrategic competition between big powers like India and China, the economic interests take a back seat. So in the end, I think the Chinese are still keen about this trilateral idea between Nepal, India, and China, but the Indians have shown absolutely no interest in it at all. So in that condition, I think rather than continuing to talk about trilateralism and making Nepal a vibrant economic bridge, I think it makes more sense to develop our bilateral relations individually with India and China and see where we are 5 years down the line. If their relation between them is better at the time, maybe then the time for this idea will come. But right now, I think it's a little premature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Biswas Baral. While we talk about trilateralism, definitely we are well aware that the relations between India and China is not peaceful at the moment. There are border tensions, clashes, and even deaths. So I would like to hear more about this from the other speaker as well. Amid such, is trilateralism really possible? I would like to hear from Mr. Anwar.
Thank you. I think I will echo most of the part Mr. Biswas Baral, whatever he mentioned. I think that was quite realistic. So if we take a little bit few years back perspective, when China started Belt and Road Initiative, India officially one of the major country in Asia that officially opposed BRI and didn't send any kind of representative, none of those to BRI summit. But Chinese strategic point of view was that the engage India in the other form, not per se the Belt and Road Initiative. And as a result, we have seen that the China initiated AIIB, Asian Investment and Infrastructure Bank. India is one of the highest loan taker from that organization. And we have seen that over the period of time, trade and investment has been increased many-fold. But that was the previous scenario before the border clash. But after the border clash, I think the scenario has been changed radically, and the Indian public opinion, Indian policymaker increasingly suspicious about Chinese intention and Chinese so-called push and pull strategy that we have seen all over the world, especially South China Sea. Sometimes they try to find some common ground to cooperate. At the same time, they also take some kind of assertiveness whenever it's necessary. So in the border clash with India, we have seen such kind of notion. And after that, we have seen that India take major steps in terms of economy and in terms of blockade their major mobile apps and so on. And India also, I think, the more from the strategic point of view, that these border clash basically push India a step further to United States so-called free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. We have seen the Malabar naval exercise has been growing, and India is more actively participating in so-called Quad, that India, Japan, Australia, and United States. So I would think that the trilaterals with India, Nepal, and China is very much unlikely as we move forward. And that would be the scenario, major part of the South Asian country, where we will see that China and India actively competing with each other within the smaller country. And therefore, a smaller country will need to find their own way how they want to engage with this country rather than bring these two together. That I think quite unrealistic given the current scenario.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to ask our participants if they have any question, please drop in the chat box. Previously, the Chinese speakers had mentioned about the US and the Indo-Pacific strategy, MCC, and so many things. As we know, like US and China are in a tough race to be the world's first economy, and India and US have maintained a close sort of relations and some sort of alliance. So in the context of Nepal, MCC had raised so many concerns and it is yet to be passed by the parliament as well. So do you think such alliance between India and the US can influence or can create some sort of impact in trilateralism? I want to hear from the Chinese speakers. Mr. Shubin or Mr. Sheng?
Okay, yeah, I can talk about that. You mean like the impact of US on the trilateral relations between those two countries and platforms. Yeah, I think the impact is very significant and mostly very negative in this sense, because as our speakers just mentioned about how India is already like leaning towards this concept of Indo-Pacific strategy, and it doesn't seem like he's going back. I mean, at least at this moment, it doesn't seem like India is on the road of rethinking about this tendency, and we see that recently the conflict, the border conflict between China and India has already intensified. I mean, part of reason is that this historical conflict has always existed, and it comes to India's mind that it has to try to solve it right now, not in the future, because it seems like the time is not necessarily on the side of India, because India is afraid that as time goes by, as Chinese overall strength, including military strength, increases and enhances in the future, it would be more difficult for India to get a favorable deal in terms of the border negotiation. And I mean, part of the reason why is this, but part of the reason is that U.S. has always been inciting for this type of border conflict. I mean, like we also saw that in the same situation in South China Sea is that U.S. has been constantly trying to get into the situation, while in actually for the last couple of years, the situation in South China Sea has already calmed down, like because of the change of the administration in Philippines and stuff. But US always want to like keep the tension high in order to serve its own needs, and it is inviting India to get into the South China Sea issue as well. And this is a concept of linkage, that if India is invited by the United States and it is willing to join the United States in those areas such as South China Sea and those sort of areas, the distrust between China and India is going to increase, and of course this will have very negative impact on the possibility of a trilateral cooperation mechanism between China and Nepal and India, and this increasing trend of conflict can also make India not want to join the Belt and Road even more, and this would like decrease the possibility of establishing an institutionalized mechanism for cooperation.
Thank you. Ms. Angana has a question. What are the economic plans of China in Nepal? Mr. ZHANG, Shubin, would you like to respond on that?
Okay, China is always ready to help Nepal in the economic development. Okay. You know, since the the first premiership of Mr. Ali, when he visited China, China and Nepal signed more than 10 agreements. During the second visit by Mr. Ali's visit, another 10 maybe. And during last year's President Xi Jinping's visit to Nepal, nearly 20, I think, 20 agreements were signed between the two countries. But until now, I think most of these agreements and BI projects, if not nothing existence, I would like to say it is in a very slow pace to implementing them, right? So China is, as a good friend of Nepal, I had been working in Nepal for 3 years. And after, since I came back from Nepal to China, we set up the Nepal Study Center in my university. That is the first one in China to introduce Nepal to the Chinese people, to promote Nepal in China. Okay? As a friend of Nepal, I'm also very worried about what is wrong with Nepal. Because several days ago, I talked with some Nepali friends. Now, if Nepal is really willing to accept the BRI projects and is really willing to carry out, to implement all the agreements they signed with China, the government of Nepal now, they should show strong enough political will to do anything that is good for Nepal, for the people, for the society, right? Just now you asked me through the WeChat, you asked me if I would like to answer something about the MCC by United States. Now, to me, I think if MCC is only economic programs, just as those who are, in favor of MCC passed in the Nepal House of Representatives, just as like they say, it's no problem. But what puzzles me most is that so many American diplomats and high-level officials, even the state, the Department of State declaration about the Indo-Pacific Strategy Report, it openly says that MCC is a tool of Indo-Pacific strategy to counter China. That is what puzzles me most. So if it is a tool of the United States to counter China, I think Sri Lanka, the government of Sri Lanka has set a good example for Nepal. Several days ago, when Mr. Pompeo visited Nepal, visited Sri Lanka, the president of Sri Lanka, he told the press, the journalists, saying that I will never sign the MCC agreement with the United States, even in dream, right? Now, if it is good, if you think it is good for Nepal's development, for Nepal's national interest, okay, you accept it. But if it is only used as a tool of the United States to counter China's BRI, China will certainly strongly oppose it. And if so, I think Nepal will become a playground for big powers to compete with each other instead of a platform for all the major powers to cooperate in Nepal. I think Nepal should serve as a platform for cooperations between or among the major countries in the world, such as China, India, United States, and European countries, and maybe as well as Japan and South Korea. Okay, all these countries are providing some help or some aids to Nepal, but they are aiming at different directions. So on the part of Nepal, the government of Nepal or the people of Nepal should keep in mind, now if some program is really good for Nepal, okay, you accept it. If it is not so good or even harmful to your country, why will you accept it? That is my general opinion about the MCC and the Chinese BRI programs in Nepal. Several years ago, in the past several years, I visited Nepal time and again. Okay, I found that so many Chinese projects in Nepal were suffering a lot of loss or even troubles. Now, take the ring road upgradation, for example. Now, before I left Nepal, the Chinese company had already entered Nepal to launch the project. But only last year, the ring road's first phase first phase, operation has finished. So that is the big problem for the Chinese people. As for me, okay, the Chinese company will never like the project be delayed. Now, what is the reason behind the delay? I think the government of Nepal should do its homework, should do what it should do to help the foreign countries to help Nepal to develop,
Thank
That
you.
is my, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shubin. There is a question from the audience. Ramesh Upriti has asked, relation of India with Pakistan and China is not good, and India is dominating Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Bangladesh, saying it has a very good relation and historical ties with those countries. So when will India changes its foreign policy with neighboring countries and start to see them as sovereign countries? And when will India start to open the door for open border South Asia, like as Europe? The question is from Ramesh Upreti. So I think Miss Angana Guha Roy could reply about this.
Hi, Shristi. Thank you, Ramesh ji, for asking the question. But my presentation was regarding India-Nepal bilateral economic relations, and so far India's foreign policy towards its neighbor is concerned, it is like the discussions and the progress, the dialogues are always on in the government level. So I would rather stick to my domain of bilateral relations. And so far, India's relations with Nepal is concerned, we have very good relations. We have a robust relations, and in the recent times, even after certain controversies, there has been high-profile delegation visits. And given the kind of past relations, the cultural ties, the social ties, the historical ties we share. We are we eventually, as neighbors, we have certain problems always, like we can have problems, but there is nothing that can't be addressed and can't be discussed, and all the discussions are on in the government level, and we are also witnessing so many high profile delegation visits. So I think that it's all.
Thank you. We have another question. It's from Hu Yue. I guess it's from Global Times. The question is, Indian Army Chief General Manoj Mukund is in Nepal for a 3-day visit beginning November 4 against the background of potential border dispute among 3 countries. How do you think the visit may impact on trilateral ties? The second question, Western media has kept hyping up the Nepal and China land dispute and accused China of seizing the territory from Nepal, through both foreign ministries have denied. How do you evaluate those reports, and what might be the influence of the negative reports on China-Nepal relations? I'm not sure who could respond. So maybe the question is addressed to the Nepal and China side. Indian and Nepalese speakers, please. So maybe Biswas ji, can you reply?
About the army chief's visit?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there are 2 ways to say it. Some people are saying it as pretty routine, because every Indian army chief gets the rank of honorary general in Nepal, so it's no big deal, right? So this is just another army chief coming, and we are giving him the same honor. It's no different to what we've done in the past. But other people are saying, when there is such dispute in Kalapani, when India is encroaching on our land, why should we welcome him at such a sensitive time? So there are 2 schools of thoughts, but I personally don't see much wrong with it, because it's not the first time this has happened. It happens every time there's a new army chief in Nepal. It is honored in India, and we honor the Indian army chief. So I think it's a pretty routine affair, and I don't think that you should mix everything up you know, when in foreign policy is very delicate stuff. So you should not mix, try to mix too many issues, because that tends to further complicate things. And I think the more normal, the routine stuff between India and Nepal, for instance, the visit of army chief or the joint secretary level meeting, the more routinely they take place, I think the greater the chances that India-Nepal relations that have been a little strained of late will return to normalcy.
Thank you. There is a second question as well. Western media has kept hyping up the Nepal and China land dispute. So maybe Hariji can answer. Hariji, are you there?
Okay.
The question is, Western media has kept hyping up the Nepal and China land dispute and accused China of seizing the territory from Nepal, though both foreign ministries have denied. How do you evaluate those reports?
Okay, thank you, Shristi, and thank you. Thank you to who has asked this question regarding to the propaganda or regarding the news published by the Western media. So in my observation, this is the strategic movement of Western medias, to implicate the Nepal-China relations and to build some negative environment between Nepal and China relations regarding the territorial dispute in the Himalayan border between Nepal and China. The both foreign ministers have already denied that there is no any dispute, border dispute between Nepal and China, and this is only the news propagated or news published by the Western media. So I think Nepal and China are very sensitive to maintain the very good relations between Nepal and China, because Nepal has highly prioritized the neighborhood policy, and Nepal has also quite serious. Has been also quite serious to maintain the relations equally, relations with India also. So any kind of foreign news media or Western news media cannot spoil the relations of Nepal with China or Nepal's relations with India, I think.
Thank you. Is there any other question from our online audiences? I guess not. If any speaker wants to add anything on this topic, please feel free. Otherwise, we will go towards the concluding. I think there are no
Shristi, you are muted.
I think there are no other questions from the audience side. If any speaker wants to add on this topic, please feel free. Otherwise, we will go towards the concluding session. I don't think there are any other questions. So shall we conclude? Thank you so much to all our distinguished speakers for sharing your valuable insights. Definitely, there are more areas for cooperation than for confrontation due to shared geography, common problems to tackle issues like poverty, climate change, governance, unemployment, and food security, and ambition to make the nation and people prosperous. I think India, China, and Nepal, all the three countries must realize that there are no other options than to work together for the common good and prosperity of the citizens. As the previous speakers also mentioned, Nepal can play or act as a breeze, a vibrant economic breeze between two geopolitical rivals, so that they can maintain friendship and harmony among themselves. I think all the three nations should play a proactive role to realize a trilateralism that benefits all the people of these three countries, of the region and beyond. With that note, I would like to wrap up the webinar for today. Once again, a big thanks to all our distinguished speakers for your valuable insights, and also thanks to our virtual audiences. Have a good day, everyone, and please stay safe.
Thank you.